Welcome once again to the Irish NFL show, brought to you in association with our partners at Cassidy Travel. I'm Mark Cockrell. I suppose I'll play Porthos this evening, and Athos and Aramis are with me, as we're only three musketeers. Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, good to see you, gents. How you doing?
Very well, Mark. Looking forward to another intriguing weekend, and hopefully, maybe we've all learned some lessons given what has happened over the past couple of weeks between the Bears shocking your Patriots, the Steelers shocking the Bucks, and the Panthers. I think, which might have been the biggest surprise of all. So nobody, I don't. When we talk about locks of the week, you're tossing a coin, I feel.
Well, there's the lock of the week at Wembley on Sunday, Colin. Maybe the Broncos might shock you and get a win on Sunday. Maybe that might be the shock of the weekend. Look, I don't know if we were at the halfway point. Mark alluded to it on last night's show that it was like the halftime on this Sunday's games, but we are getting into a serious period of the season now where we're going to see teams start to push on, potentially make their way towards the playoffs. A lot of intriguing games to get through this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing the selections. As always, there's always a turn up when we get together and make picks for games.
Very, very true, Brian. There's always a shock or two on the way. There'll be no shocks for the Chargers or Chiefs. They are on a bye this week. And for those of you, if you want to check out our picks for Thursday Night Football and our podcast on Thursday Night Football, you'll find that on YouTube, on Twitter, and all our normal podcast surroundings. So that's the Ravens and Bucks game. However, we are going to talk about all the games at the weekend other than the Broncos and Jags, because there'll be a special show live from Wembley covering that, where we'll be seeing two teams with 66% combined of the wins that the New York Giants have, yet 10 times the number of losses combined the New York Giants have. So we look forward to that matchup with bated breath. You need to ring the alarms for one other reason. This is a public service announcement. Remember, clocks go back. Games will kick off at 5 p.m. this week. So don't be misled. Don't tune into Red Zone at 5 to 6 and wonder why the game's already gone on. It happens to an NFL fan every year. Don't be that fan. You know, this is a public service announcement brought to you by the Irish NFL show. Gents, even with the early start, even with a couple of games already covered, we've got plenty of games to cover. Let's start with the NFC South at 5 p.m. Panthers at the Falcons. Colin, we've got some teams with some bad records going along here. We've got one matchup between two teams with winning records. This is the 2-5 Panthers going into the 3-4 Falcons, who are joint top of the NFC South. So can't be all that bad.
Indeed, they are. And I saw a great tweet during the week that said, imagine if Calvin Ridley didn't get suspended. The Falcons would have Calvin Ridley, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts not to throw the ball to, because everything they do is run, despite an incredible array of pass catchers. They throw it 13 times in their last game. I think they might need to find a bit more balance than that, given the quality of the pass catchers that they have. PJ Walker is going to be starting for the Panthers, which is, quite telling of, I think, what the new coaching staff there thinks of perhaps Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, and I imagine there will be quite the turnover of players in the offseason for the Panthers. I am amazed if that report that the Panthers turned down 2 firsts for Brian Burns, if that is true, I'm amazed that they would turn down a haul like that. As good a player as he is, but 2 firsts is quite something. I don't think the Panthers will be able to catch the Falcons the way in which they were able to catch the Bucks. I think that was the epitome of a blasé attitude and expecting things to just go well. And then once Evans dropped that ball, it was downhill from there. I do think the Panthers will be better than they were under Matt Rule, but I think the Falcons under Arthur Smith will eke out a victory in this one, and Marcus Mariota and his merry men will continue to sit atop the division.
Yeah, I mean, the storyline last week was all about the Brady and the Bucks and how disappointing they were in terms of the performance against the Panthers. And PJ Walker probably didn't get the credit he deserves. Like, for people who, like myself, who watched the XFL before it was locked down during COVID, he was really one of the most efficient quarterbacks. He's gone. This is now his tour game. He's starting. They're talking him up this week. They're praising him, his pocket presence, his toughness. He's got all the attributes to be a quarterback in the league. And last week he was 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I'm not buying it because we saw him play against the Rams a couple of weeks ago, where I think Colin Calder last week he had 1 yard in the passing offense, and we've seen the struggles last year when he did step in for a number of games when Sam Darnold was injured. I was looking at the points in which the Panthers have scored this season. They've averaged 17 points a game on offense. The fact the 2 wins they've had is when they've gone over the 20 marker, 22 against the Saints, 21 last week. And I just don't think, as up and down as the Falcons' defense has been, I think the Falcons' defense will find a way to keep them in check. And as Colin says, it's Falcons' offense, it's run oriented. It's Mariota with the run pass option. They've got the running backs doing a very efficient job. And if they do go into the passing game, in fairness, Kyle Pitts is getting more involved. So they've got the players there to win the game. It's at home. I'll go Falcons as well to win this game and go back to 500 at 4-4.
Guys, where's the romance? Where's the dreaming? Where's the fantasy and everything? Like the Panthers, let's just imagine this. Just go with me for a second, right? Thursday night football, the Bucks, as the three of us all picked, lose to the Ravens, so they're on 3-5, and the Panthers go into Atlanta to Mercedes-Benz and they win this game. The Panthers vault to the top of the NFC South as they'll have the tiebreakers. They'll be on 3-5. Leading the division after everyone's written them off. And it's like the Princess Bride. It's a fantasy story. Like, I mean, they've beaten Fezzik the Giant, a very slow and lumbering Bucks team last week. This week, they're going against Inigo Montoya. And, you know, maybe Inigo Montoya and Marcus Mariota and his merry men, as you so aptly put it, Colin, decides to fight left-handed and decides, you know, they're not going to switch to the right hand at any point during the wait. I want to imagine for Panthers fans and what they've gone through in the last while. I mean, they've been told that Baker Mayfield is their savior. They've gone through the hurt and the pain of Matt Rule's regime. They're now in full-blown fire sale, at least on offense, for sure. And they're seeing C-Mac, obviously the face of the franchise in many respects, been traded to the 49ers. They need a bit of hope. They need something to dream of. I don't think they're going to catch them. But I'm going to just go with joy. I'm going to go with surprise. I'm going to go with the unexpected. And I'm going to imagine that the Carolina Panthers, which I didn't predict, obviously, against the Buccaneers, are going to somehow find a way to sprinkle some fairy dust on this season and are going to end the day on Sunday on top of the NFC South and beat the Atlanta Falcons. Don't you remember what it was like to dream? Let's just dream for them for a second.
Daring to dream. Michael McQuaid is not daring to dream. He is going with the Falcons.
Mark, sorry, your dreaming scenario. You're reminding me. You call it out time and time again how year in year out when the Giants were having poor seasons, I come up with all these little permutations and scenarios as to how they're going to win the division. You're starting to sound like that now. Only you're doing it for the Panthers.
Hey, someone's got to stand up for those poor kitty cats. That's all I'm saying. Standing up for a team as well. Next game we're going to look at tonight, gents. Bears versus the Cowboys. 2 teams coming off great Week 7 wins. We really don't have to talk much about the Bears win if you're okay with that. Like, I mean, we just gloss over that complete annihilation of the Patriots on Monday Night Football. I'm good if you don't feel the need to talk about it at all. Just suggesting, throwing it out there. But, you know, Bears, Cowboys finally finding use for Justin Fields. Cowboys finally getting their franchise quarterback back on the field as well. Colin, how do you see this one going the weekend?
My biggest hope for this game is that Justin Fields gets the protection he deserves. Because in a season where we have seen some of the most ridiculous roughing the passer calls, every single week, Fields gets smashed in the head, he gets taken down at the knee, It is insane. The hit he took, he got absolutely crushed between two Patriots players the other night. If that had been Tom Brady, the cops would have been on the field to arrest the two pass rushers. It would have made the Devonta Adams stuff look minor. It is ridiculous how he gets treated, and he is going to need it at the weekend, because going up against a Cowboys defense that is merciless. They are fantastic, and Dan Quinn keeps finding new ways. And what's been, we talked about it a bit last year, and we've seen it again this year. He keeps evolving, and this is not the Dan Quinn of old. This is Dan Quinn going against his previous instincts, and every week they're impressive. And even it's not only the Micah Parsons show. We've seen Diggs actually grow into becoming a better player. Last year he was completely boom or bust. This year he's a lot more steady and has been seriously impressive. We talked about it a little bit on last night's show. I like what the Bears did with Justin Fields against the Patriots. I hope we see a lot more design runs. I think that would really help him, and I hope he can go on to become a true franchise QB. But I still think that they are limited, so I'm going to go with the Cowboys to win this one. But I think the Bears' offense is something that I may be looking at as a Broncos fan and going, I dare to dream.
Well, Colin was talking about the rough treatment that Justin Fields has been getting throughout the course of this season and last season, and I'll call another game out to you, and it was last season, Monday Night Football, when they went into Pittsburgh, and he was manhandled in that game, and there was flags not given, and there was uproar after that game. For some reason, he seems to be the fall guy when it comes to this decision. As you said, bear in mind what we saw of last weekend in particular, where some of the plays by the flags by the referees was really poor. My intriguing part for this game is the Cowboys offense, because everybody expected Dak Prescott last week to come back and light it up against the Lions defense, which has been quite weak. And having spoke to a couple of Cowboys fans, they play the same methodical offense in which we saw under Cooper Rush. They feel now that Mike McCarthy has recognised they don't need to be going with an expansive offense. They've got the defense to win them games. Let's just not put ourselves in a position where we're causing ourselves harm on the offensive side of the ball. Where I see this game being won for the Cowboys is on the run game. The Bears are averaging 149 yards per game, giving up against the run. Zeke Elliott is actually having a better season than people think. He's been really efficient. He played well last week, played well in Philadelphia week 2. He came back into the game last week and haven't been injured. So for me, it's a Cowboys win. I still think we will see an improvement from the Bears offense. I think, Colin, you're right. I think they've recognised now that there is other attributes to the game in which Justin Fields provides that they haven't been utilising properly, but ultimately I don't think it'll be enough to beat this Cowboys team, in particular the fact that it's at home in Dallas. So Cowboys win and roll on to 6-2 for me.
To sleep, perchance to dream. There's the rub. The reality, as Shakespeare so eloquently put it, is that dreams are mostly associated with sleep. And whilst I might be able to dream on behalf of the Carolina Panthers, I can't dream on behalf of the Chicago Bears, because what will be seen is that Monday night was a mere mischievous dream and spirit dancing around their heads. And ultimately, this team will be found out. They're found out on a regular basis on their offensive line. And this Cowboys team has already proved that when they're up against a poor offensive line, see Rams, Los Angeles, they will absolutely dominate and decimate them. The attacks can come from anywhere. Micah Parsons is just a nuisance, frankly, but they've got strength all along that defensive line. Now, if the offensive line can hold up and, you can potentially exploit some gaps in their secondary. Diggs also will make his interceptions, but he also can be beaten as well, as he proved in his rookie season, and he's proven again this year. I just don't think the Bears have the downfield threats. I don't think that they will be able to pull the same trick twice in terms of, refining their run game, and obviously in a very wet... Actually, sorry, let me clarify this. If it rains for the rest of the season, the Bears have a chance. Every time it rains, they win. Rained heavily in week 1 against 49ers, they won. Rained heavily on Monday Night Football, they destroyed the Patriots. That's what they need. They need to do a rain dance, basically. It's not going to rain. in Texas on Sunday. It's not going to rain at Jerry World. The Cowboys are going to win this game. Brian, you got a point.
Yeah, wasn't Belichick due to break a record there on Monday night to Hallis?
The fact that I might have brought that up the week before, doesn't it? Yes, if he had won, he would have overtaken George Hallis, the longtime Chicago Bears coach, for the second most regular and postseason wins in the NFL.
Yeah. Not only did it rain in the game, they rained on his parade, you could say. Boom, boom.
But yeah, and we talk about the Bears, and we talked about the 72 Dolphins. The 85 Bears, the only team they lost to during the regular season, were the 85 Miami Dolphins, who maintained that perfection streak and everything. So, sometimes when the NFL sets these things up, it doesn't quite pan out how they would like it to be.
Cowboys fans, if you are to have one concern, it is that all four of us have gone for the Cowboys, because Michael is on board the Jerry train as well, and that should perhaps concern Cowboys fans a little.
But Colin, that surprised me a little, because Michael has been so positive about the Bears all season that picking against them it doesn't sound like him. Doesn't sound like him at all. Okay, moving swiftly on, a team that's just getting back its quarterback against a team that might have had a quarterback that suddenly lost his way altogether once more. The 4-3 Miami Dolphins are going up against the 1-5 Lions, who seem to have played better than that record, but certainly haven't played anything near deserving any better record the last couple of weeks. Colin, can they reboot that offense? And my God, have they done anything to improve that defense yet?
Last week there were signs of life on the defense. They certainly early on they really frustrated the Cowboys, and it seemed that they had used the bye to make changes. Unfortunately, the offense then struggled. This is an interesting one. You could sound the revenge klaxon, because obviously Dan Campbell once upon a time was the interim head coach of the Dolphins. And get this, in his 12-game stint there, he won more games. He won 5 games. So he's actually has a better winning record with the Dolphins than he currently has with the Lions. Look, you'd love to see it work for Dan Campbell and for the Lions. I mean, talk about a long-suffering franchise. People talk about Detroit being the factory of sadness for a reason. And there was a lot of excitement and hope in the offseason, and we all enjoyed Hard Knocks and, some of the memes that came out of that. But the product on the field was super exciting through the first few weeks up until they ran into the Patriots. But it at some point they just have to get a win and really put down a performance. For me, though, with Tua back, it's difficult to see them getting that against the Dolphins. I think they'll cause the Dolphins problems given the Dolphins' injuries, but I think with Tua in there, this is a game the Dolphins should win.
The Lions' offense is a bit Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, the games at home, once they've lost them, they've been very explosive on offense. I mean, they're averaging 30 points a game at home, and then they go on the road, and we felt that they could go into Foxborough. Well, most of us called it in terms of we felt that they could get shut out in Foxborough. It happened, and it wasn't much better last week. But they did play well for last week for large parts of the game, and the Cowboys got away from them in the fourth quarter. I'm not enamoured by the Dolphins offense. I know Waddle and Hill, and they've got all the great stats, and they're picking up a lot of yards and yak and yards after the catch. But then I looked at the points in which they put up this season, with the exception of the game in Baltimore, which was a miraculous fourth quarter comeback where they put up 28 unanswered points. 21 in week 1 against the Patriots, 16, 16, 17, 15, and then there was one game with a 20. They haven't put up a lot of points, which leads me to believe that this game will be one of those that the Lions can hang around in. And I'm going to go with the Lions. I think they're going to find a way to shock us. And I don't know if it's a massive shock, but I think they'll find a way to turn them over. Mark made the point there. They're 1-5, but you could say for large parts of the season, they've been very competitive in games to the very end, and they should have won. I'm going to run with the Lions. Dan Campbell served as interim head coach with the Dolphins. He was the tight end coach there. He get his revenge on his former team on Sunday, and the Lions will get their second win this season.
Well, the surprise klaxon has been sounded in relation to that. But at the same token, the Dolphins could be sounding some klaxons even after last week's performance. Yes, they got Tua back, but let's bear in mind, while they started the game against the Steelers looking $1 million, like every drive was ending in points, they put a touchdown up, they scored, I think, 13 of their points in the first quarter. They didn't score all for the second half. Their defense, however, remained strong and kept the Steelers bottled up. And I don't think the Lions offense is necessarily as bad as the Steelers, but they are dealing with their own injuries. Ra St. Brown was obviously brought out of the Lions last game as well. I'm not sure of his exact status at the time of recording, but the reality is they're dealing with a few nicked up people. They're on backups and a number of positions. They just don't have the depth to be able to absorb that. And I'm sorry, but again, Jared Goff has been ultimately found out. They've had a few wrinkles, which has relieved the pressure on him, was giving him the right opportunities. Defenses have adjusted. And once he gets found out, he's incapable. It's like the Titanic. He can't turn quickly enough in relation to it. And whilst, let's keep the dream theme going, whilst The Sandman was finally made into a series, long awaited, with the character Dream, the famous graphic novel by Neil Gaiman. After many years, it was made into a TV series there recently by Amazon Prime. The Lions fans are still waiting for their team to be made into an actual Super Bowl contender, as they remain one of 4 teams who have never even made the Super Bowl. It's not changing this season, to be sure. It's also not changing this game. Dolphins will have too much for me. I'm very firmly on the Dolphins to start to click again with Tua's return and everything. So, yeah, they move to 5-3. They keep that AFC East extremely competitive for me.
Brian is a lone wolf in this one because Michael is going for the Dolphins.
Very good, very good. Well, look, we're going to wrap up this segment of the podcast, and we'll continue on with some other games in a second. So, to kick off this next segment of the podcast, Cardinals, 3-4 Cardinals at the 5-1 Vikings. And, Colin, it's hard to say that we know what to expect from the Cardinals these days. I mean, they came out with an amazingly surprising performance on Thursday Night Football, albeit fueled by 2 Andy Dalton gifts, 2 pick sixes within about 60 seconds of each other. And to be sure that, we looked at the Vikings in detail. We interviewed Kevin Connell during the off-season. But no, I don't think we actually predicted that they would be here coming off the bye. 5-1, you might have given them credit for. You wouldn't necessarily have given them credit or believed that they would have an effective 3-game lead in the division, given they've got the tiebreaker and Green Bay's poor start to the year. You've got Randy Moss hanging in the background, Colin. How are you feeling about the Vikings this weekend? Not actually Randy Moss, a Randy Moss jersey, just to be clear.
Yeah, that'll be something. Randy Moss just hanging out. He had to rent a room because he couldn't deal with the Dublin property prices. This is, I think obviously they hold quite the lead in the division. A lot of that down to just how poor the Packers have been. It'll be very interesting to see how they come back off the bye. And right now, when you see the injury reports, the Cards have quite the extensive injury report. The Vikings listed 1 player on their injury report. So that could be something to, keep an eye on. The Cards do not like going to the Great White North. They have lost their last 10 games in Minnesota. You have to go all the way back to 1977 for them to get a victory there. This is too, historically Jekyll and Hyde for the Vikings, but this card side, you don't know what they're going to be, and a lot of that I think is down to the head coach, who, half the time I don't know what he's doing. Like, we saw Kyler Murray arguing with him on the side of the field again the other night, and D-Hop kind of getting involved to keep that from spilling over. For me, I suppose one of the things the Cards have been really good at this year, though, is takeaways. And the talked Mark about the Andy Dalton giving them the two gimmies. Usually Kirk Cousins doesn't do that. Usually he's actually pretty safe with the ball, unless when he does throw an interception, it tends to be some of the worst. I think his one that he threw against the Bears in December last year might be the worst interception I have ever seen, and that includes Peterman for the Bills when he had that game where he threw 5. But 5, that was quite something. But Kirk Cousins against the Bears, I trust Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson a little bit more than I do the Cards. This is one, again, though, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Cards finally break that streak and get it. But I'm going to say that Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, and Kirk Cousins move to 6-1.
At some stage, we have to have faith in this Vikings team. Mark always says, don't back the Vikings or don't pick the Vikings because you'll always get it wrong. But they're getting it right this season, and Columns due to the freshness of the team coming back. Mark Hogan, who does a lot of our social media work, he does a number of podcasts for us during the week, big Cardinals fan, had a nice content piece with Jason Hayes, who writes a number of articles for the show last week, and they're both Cardinals fans, and they both spoke so disappointingly around the fact that the offense this year has stuttered and Cliff Kingsbury doesn't want to give up plays, and we saw that last week again around some of the play calling, and Collins touched on the fact that, you know, things aren't well there. Kyler Murray's not happy with his head coach. They were quite aggressive towards one another, and Mark, you talked about how they rebounded last week, but then, like, how much of it was down to the Saints' defense struggles and the pick sixes that kind of throws in an extra 48 points. I don't see this any other way than a Vikings win. I'm looking at Cousins' numbers. I mean, he's 1,500 yards and he's had his bye week. He's had 9 touchdowns and, okay, he's had 5 interceptions. I can't believe I'm saying it because I've been so negative on the guy for so long, but he seems to be finally settling down and he's playing efficient football for them. And they've got the playmakers at home, Cook, Jefferson. I don't think the Cardinals can live with them, bearing in mind how much their offense has been off this season, and I don't buy into the fact that it rebounded last week. I was looking at the point scores in terms of what the Vikings have put up: 24, 29, 28, 28. 3 games in a row where they're averaging around 27 and 30 points. Can you genuinely see the Cardinals going in and putting up those point numbers? Not for me. Vikings in a blowout.
So I didn't realize this now. Like, I mean, we've got Cardinals podcast going on. We've got Broncos podcast going on. Lads, I'm just calling up Bill Belichick. I'm recording something next week just on the Patriots. Like, I mean, you know, we just need to balance this out a little bit, right? But look, Brian, you're being sucked in. And I'm going to explain to you, this is the typical honey trap going on. She looks like the woman of your dreams, but really she's a double agent for the Russians, the KGB. You're being sucked in. That's what the Vikings are. They're sucking you in yet again. They suck us in every year. It's like everything looks right. Everything looks like it should work. Everything looks like it should be perfect. I'm going to just reiterate, again, another public service announcement for the benefit of any listeners or watchers of the Irish NFL show. If you are thinking about putting money on gambling in any way, shape, or form, please don't just gamble responsibly. If it involves the Minnesota Vikings, do not do it. I beg of you, please do not do it, because it will always end in tears. Even in the greatest moments when we thought, no, definitely they're going to fall apart here, they pull out a win out of nowhere. When we think they're on the right track, they somehow manage to spirit a loss out of thin air. This could be that game. This doesn't have trap game written all over it for me. This is one they're going to mess up. This is one they're going to somehow throw away yet again. And maybe it's the Cardinals with the connection between Murray and D-Hop coming back, having the wrung some of the rust off. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Got rid of some of the rust. That's what I'll say. And many times against the Saints there, they did look more impressive. The thing that would worry me if I'm a Cardinals fan is just how actually porous their defense looked on Thursday Night Football and continues to look. They've got gaps there. And so if I'm really honestly and analyzing this, the Vikings offense should be able to exploit that. Somehow, some way, in my heart of hearts, I think the Cards are going to come up on another piece of a Hail Murray magic and sneak away with a win here. But don't put money on it. Please don't put money on it. The Vikings will win this by 2 points, squeaking away with it. It won't be a blowout. They will win and move to 6-1. Do you see how much I'm doubting myself even saying these words? I actually am really struggling with this, guys. But yeah, Vikings. I'm going to go for.
I know why you're feeling like that, Mark, because it's been year after year of, misfortune for the Vikings when you think they're turning the corner. But this season, in fairness to them, they won a tight one in Wembley. Sorry, Tottenham. They won a tight one in Tottenham. Okay, double doink, whatever you want, but they still found a way to get over the line. They were down significantly against the Lions at home. They came back and won 28-24. They had the game won against the Bears, and they let the Bears come back and get into a lead late, and they went down and scored a winning touchdown. There's something different about the fact. It's a Kevin O'Connell factor, it has to be. That they're finding ways to win these games that they used to always find ways to lose. And that's a big difference right now.
Brian, I feel like I need a shower. I feel slightly dirty picking them because something's clearly going to go wrong in relation to it.
Are we full house, Colin? Are we full house?
Full house. Michael is on the Vikings as well.
Cards all the way, so.
It's absolutely doomed, is all I can say. Look, if the Vikings are going to do it, and Viking fans should be getting excited because it's a weak NFC this year. So they've got opportunities, certainly, to not only win the NFC North and how the Packers are playing, but potentially do something very dramatic in the postseason as well. So we'll see. Okay, moving on. Another team that is, what a tangled web we weave when we flatter to deceive. The LV, the Las Vegas Raiders are going up against the NO, the New Orleans Saints. The Raiders column are 2-4. Yeah, I'm still not quite sure how they're 2-4, and again, don't have a better record than that, given some of the throwaways they've done. We give out about the Ravens throwing away games. The Raiders definitely have as well. And the Saints obviously going through a bit of turmoil. Dennis Allen announcing at the time today, on the time of recording, that Andy Dalton's going to be their starting quarterback with Jameis Winston benched, not for health reasons, being very clear in relation to that. How do you break it down, and which one of these teams can then go on a run and potentially challenge in, as I said, an underperforming NFC this year?
I don't think it will be the Saints with taking advantage of that NFC. I think this will be the Raiders, but it is a Raiders team who are leaning into Josh Jacobs rather than the pass catchers. I spent the summer talking about Adams and Renfro and Waller, and Waller apparently may play on Sunday, but this is all about Josh Jacobs. So his last three games, most recently, 143 yards, 3 touchdowns, average over 7 yards a carry. Before that, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, again averaged over 7 yards a carry. And the game prior to that, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, and over 5 yards a carry. I don't know if people saw the clip of him telling the O-line that he's going to buy them dinner. Maybe Tom Brady should try that rather than screaming and roaring at them. They tend to be big guys, maybe motivate them rather than scream and roar at them. But who knows? It seems to be working for Josh Jacobs. And for me, this is a Saints team who, even under Dennis Allen, have struggled a little bit against the run this year. And for that reason, I'm going to say that Derek Carr there's only 2 teams that he hasn't, he's never lost to, and those are the Panthers and the Saints. I'm going to say that continues thanks to Josh Jacobs and the much maligned Raiders O-line.
The Raiders offense has played very well of late, and people were kind of down on them with the Devontae Adams at the start of the season, the fact that he wasn't getting involved and teams were double teaming them. And yeah, they've gone away from the Devontae Adams factor, and they've leaned on the run. Last week they had 3 drives of 70 plus yards or more, which resulted in touchdowns. Against the Chiefs, they did 2 drives with 70 plus yards, resulted in touchdowns. So they're being very efficient on offense, complementing with Jacobs, and obviously then trying to get the receivers more involved. The Saints defense last week in Arizona struggled. The week before that against a really dynamic, fairness Bengals offense, which has rebounded very well with Chase and Burrow. They struggled in that game. And the way the Raiders offense is playing at the moment, I see them struggling again in this game. And whilst it's in the Dome, it's in New Orleans, right now I don't think the Saints are going in the right direction. I think the Raiders, if anybody of the 2 and 4 teams that are there in the position can go on and run, put themselves back in the mix for a wild card at least, it's the Raiders for me. So I'm going to go with the Raiders to go to 3 and 4 this weekend.
So I set it up, column about the NFC, and obviously I agree. The Saints aren't going to make a run in the NFC, but the Raiders are going to make a run in the AFC. And I'm going to call it now. They're going to get a wild card. I'm going to go one step further. You look at the rest of their schedule ahead, and some of the challenges they've had earlier in the season won't be replicated. You say they're leaning into Josh Jacobs. Well, who else have they got? Josh Jacobs has run for 633 yards this season so far. The next running back is Brandon Bolden on 29 yards. Like, we talk about teams with a 1-2 punch. This team with a 1 punch at running back. And if he gets injured, all bets are off. They become completely one-dimensional, and we've seen what happens with Derek Carr in the past. The offensive line is incrementally getting better, and maybe Josh McDaniels in his second go round as a head coach has learned a little something this time around, and he's actually making his team better as the season goes on, instead of starting very hot and then collapsing in a pathetic form as he did in his last head coach stint. I actually think this Raiders team is getting better week on week. I think they should have more than enough to beat the New Orleans Saints this weekend. However, and this is where my caveat comes in, I am worried about them joining the Cowboys and the Vikings in the group of teams that you should never bet on to win or to lose, because one way or the other, they will always let you down. I think they're turning a corner. I think they're going to go on a bit of a run, and I think they're going to move at least to 3 and 4 with beating the New Orleans Saints this weekend. Andy Dalton is not the answer. Unless it's the most Irish-looking quarterback in the NFL, Andy Dalton is never the actual answer. Colin, do we have a full house on this?
We do not. Michael is going for the Saints. He thinks that Dennis Allen and Andy Dalton and maybe the sprinkling of Taysom Hill that we mentioned will get the victory.
Stranger things have happened, including only last weekend in the NFL. So who knows? Michael, as the lone wolf on that one, could be proved right. We're going to wrap up this segment of the podcast with just a bit of a dash of AFC East. The 3 and 4 New England Patriots, really smart, are going up against the surprisingly superb and spectacular New York Jets, albeit with 2 absolutely key contributors now on IR in Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker, their left guard. They have traded for James Robinson, but can Robinson help keep the 5-2 train and the playoff-bound New York Jets playoff train on track? Colin, what's your take on it?
This game, kind of so many different ways to look at it. Look, we know now that Mac Jones will be the starter. I am baffled by what went on the other night. I don't understand why you would pull him that quickly, and the way in which the fans reacted. It just means that it's a mess. And Mark, I know that you had opinions on what Bill Belichick was doing, not naming an offensive coordinator. He didn't want to name a starter. I just don't know. I don't think that uncertainty helps anyone. The Patriots, and maybe he wants to move on from Brady and everything that was there. But you knew for the best part of 20 years, you knew exactly what the Patriots were, and you knew how they were going to attack you, but you didn't know how to stop it. And that was the issue. But there's none of that now. All there is complete uncertainty, complete chaos. And maybe this is Bill's way of trying to get away from what was there. So Mac is going to start, but if Mac doesn't, play well through the first quarter, do they bring Zappi in again? That's the uncertainty I just don't get. And that's what you used to almost have from the Jets. You don't know what the Jets were. You don't. They seem to be the ones in chaos, whereas they've moved away from that. They went against the Broncos last week, despite losing their best player. Connor Rogers talked to us about that last night on the O-line. Their incredible young running back, one of the best blocking wide receivers, and a phenomenal talent, Corey Davis. They lost all of those, and they still went out and beat the Broncos. So to me, though, like where this comes down to is, can the Jets do it again with the pressure that Bill Belichick and the Patriots will inevitably bring on Zach Wilson? He is terrible. And Sam Monson had a couple of really good tweets about this, about the splits between when Zach Wilson isn't under pressure and when he is under pressure. And he said he doesn't know if there has been a quarterback where there is such a differential between the two. So what teams are going to do, pressure, pressure, pressure. And can the Jets find a way to deal with that? I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots found a way to win. We all know what Bill thinks of the Jets, and he does enjoy a victory. But I am going to say that Robert Saleh and his new running back in Robinson find a way to win it. I don't expect it to be a classic. I think this will be a tight divisional matchup, and the Jets to just edge it.
The Patriots defense has played a lot better than people would give it credit for this season. Maybe Mark will have a different take on it, but the two games in which they struggled the most was when they played running type quarterbacks, and that was Lamar when they played at home and they gave up 37 points and then the 34 points last weekend to Justin Fields, who was used in a similar manner. When they go up against other quarterbacks, they can hold them in check. They certainly should be in a position to hold Zach Wilson in check. But I also think it's so difficult. This is, to me, is the most difficult game of the weekend to pick, because it's very similar on the other side. Do I see Mac Jones being in a position to do a lot against this really strong front seven of the Jets and the way the Jets are playing in the secondary with Sauce Gardner? No, I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. And I think genuinely it's a field goal type of game. And would it surprise me if the Patriots win? No. Do I think James Robinson will have a much bigger role than people think? Bearing in mind he's just got traded. Yeah, and I think I could see him hitting the ground running. I mean, we saw what he did in week 3 in LA for the Jags before he was taken out of the equation. He had a huge run that night. He started off the season quite well. He's still a very efficient running back, so I think he can step in, not to the level of what Breece Hall was showing us, but certainly put themselves in a position where they're not having so much of a drop off. I'm going to go with the Jets as well. And it's hard to pick against the Patriots because they've been so effective and so successful against the Jets over the years. But something is turning in this division, and we said in the off-season that we spoke and we alluded to how well the Jets have been in the offseason and how well Joe Douglas has been in terms of stockpiling for drafts, and we felt they were going in the right direction. They're probably a little bit ahead of where we expected to be, but right now it's where this season is. They win this game, they go to 6-2, well in with a position in terms of being a playoff team. And I'm finding it difficult, even though as I'm giving the pick, I'm still finding it difficult to give the pick. Jets to win, a very close one.
It feels like my pick on the Vikings, Brian. I see the strain you're going through in terms of trying to say the words, the Jets to win. I wanted to say A2 Brute, actually, as well, when you were making your Jets pick, but I won't go there.
And
it's funny.
Sorry, one more point. I just want to say it's not because I don't trust the Jets, because we've been down this road before, and that's why I don't want to pick in. I just genuinely see a scenario where this could be whoever gets the ball last type game, and they go down and kick a field goal. That's
so it could be. It could even be a 3-0 game, given the potential for both defenses to shut out offenses. It's funny. Belichick in some ways explained the strange decision against the Bears. He did actually say in his press conference that it was always the plan that both quarterbacks would play some of the game. They knew that. That was part of the discussion with them beforehand. The reality is Belichick doesn't feel the need to explain every move he makes to the media, but he did at least indicate that was always part of it. And on a slippy field with a quarterback coming back from injury, you can justify potentially some of it. However, he's made it clear that Mac Jones is starting this weekend. Who knows the conversations that are going on behind the scenes as to whether or not that's got the full support I do think after the amount he's coached in the league, he's been very clear with his team or with his quarterbacks where they stand one way or the other. But we will see, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. This is a horrible situation to be in. Dreams can go bad as well, guys. I mean, there are nightmares. There's Nightmare on Elm Street, there's Poltergeist, and there's William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. And in many respects, I feel like I should be exercised for this because I can't see that the Jets are going to lose this game. Their offensive line has been dominant. It kept Joe Flacco upright. It's making Zach Wilson look really good. They're busting holes in the run game. And one of the key weaknesses of the Patriots has been the run defense, not only against the Bears, as we acknowledged, but also against the Packers. And yes, they shut down the Lions. And yes, there is the potential that they can embarrass Zach Wilson like they did in his rookie season with 4 interceptions in one of the games, for example. But that's how the Jets can exploit this. And I think they've ultimately got a stronger offensive line. They definitely have a stronger defensive line. And if they control the trenches, they can control this game. May the Lord have mercy on my soul. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. But I am picking the Jets to win this game this weekend. Colm, that's 3 for the Jets. Michael, as we know, adores New England with all his heart. So are we looking at a full house?
We are not looking at a full house. Michael believes that the Patriots, and I don't know if he knew who the starting QB was going to be, but Michael believes that Bill Belichick, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, and Matt Judon will get the victory.
I think Michael has fallen into this world now where if I pick against the Patriots, they'll win. Or if I pick...
he's trying to reverse curse it, bro.
Oh, absolutely.
There's definitely a reverse curse going on here. Okay, well, gents, that brings us to the end of this segment of the podcast. Moving on, however, a couple of key games we're going to look at just in a bit of a quick fire fashion, just one of us talking on it. And I'll do the usual Michael warning. One word is all you're allowed to give in terms of your picks on it. Colm, you're going to kick us off. Last of the 5 p.m. games. The, interesting, intriguing, challenging Pittsburgh Steelers against the unbeaten, undefeated, potentially invincible Philadelphia Eagles. Break it down for us and tell us how you see this game going in your view.
They're not invincible, but they are a very good team with a very good quarterback going up against a Steelers team who are massively in transition. And we know Magical Mike Tomlin, but they struggle to get to opposing QBs without TJ. He's an enormous loss to them. And Ed Bouchette, who we have had on this program now, retired after an incredible career covering the Steelers. He said that this might be the worst Steelers offense he has ever seen. And as he acknowledged himself, he goes back a ways. So to me, though, I really think they have got to take the good and the bad with Kenny Pickett at the moment and just continue with it and see what you have. You know Mitchell Trubisky ain't it. He's not a franchise guy. So you need to play out the season, I think, with Pickett and see what you have there and see what he can do. But look, we've already talked about what the Eagles have done in terms of the trade. But here, Mike Tomlin on Jalen Hurts said, "I've got so much respect for him and the way he plays the position, his intangible qualities, leadership skills, prudent decision-making, prudent use of mobility. He's why they have very little negativity in their offense." I love the way Mike Tomlin speaks. It is very difficult to see, and I think they will get a response from him. But this Eagles team and Howie has done a magnificent job. Their biggest enemy is complacency in this game. As long as they show up, as long as they play to their ability, they should get the victory over the Steelers and continue to be unbeaten.
Eagles.
Good man. Eagles. Michael also goes for
Eagles.
So we all have the Eagles going to 7-0, and the Phillies are in the World Series. Big times in Philadelphia at this moment in time. I don't think, however, even though the Astros are in the World Series, the Texans, the people of Houston are going to be as excited about the Texans, Brian. And you're always going to break down next the first of the later games, the Titans at the Texans. Nashville might be singing after this, especially they're going up against the one-win Houston Texans side.
Yeah, with all the talk of the Colts' decision to drop Matt Ryan last week, it kind of got away from what I felt was a poor performance overall by the Titans. Like defensively, yeah, they were sound, but again, they were going up against a team that's struggling offensively. But the offense for the Titans has been erratic this season. It hasn't got going. There's no consistency there. Tannehill is not having the best of the season, and nor is Derrick Henry. Like his yards, 536 yards, 5 touchdowns. And whilst that's really good for a large amount of the running backs in this league, for what we've seen over the past of the course of the last 4 to 5 years, he's way down. I think he hit 86 last week. Of the games he's played this season, I think only with the exception of 2 games he's gone over 100 yards. He's not playing to the caliber that we're used to seeing. Their highest receiver is Robert Woods, 230 yards, 1 touchdown. Traylon Burks is injured. He hasn't hit the ground running. There's been a lot put on the third round pick. Phillips, he's not really playing well. And the the Texans have played well in a lot of games. Even last week, they were 24-20 down in the fourth quarter. And Davis Mills throws a pick 6. And I think back to the game in Soldier Field when the game was late, he throws an interception to Roquan Smith and effectively wins the game. He's reminding me of quarterbacks that we've seen, and Daniel Jones I put into that category, where early on in their career they play really well methodically for 3 quarters. They do exactly what the head coach asks, but when the game gets to the crucial point and the game hurries up, they can't handle the pressure and they can't handle the situation. And that's what we've seen from this Texans team so far this season. They're getting gashed on the run. So is this the weekend that Derrick Henry finally steps up? They're giving up on average 164 yards per game to running backs. And Damian Pierce has done really well for them. I could see him having another strong game, but this week could be the breakout game for Derrick Henry. And for me, it's a Titans victory. And not to get too into a betting aspect, the line is so low. I'm asking myself, what's the trick here? Why is it so low? Am I missing it? Am I missing something here? I don't see it. I think the Titans will win comfortably. Don't see it being a high-scoring game. I think they'll do enough to win the game and move on in a division that right now is theirs for the taking.
Colin?
I am saying the Titans. Michael is going Texans.
Okay, Titans for me. Okay, the last one of these games we're going to look at in a quick fire. I got them again, the Commanders at the Colts. And actually, when we were talking about the Pats, I meant to mention even Tom Landry realized that QB platoons don't work. Famously, he had Craig Morton and Roger Staubach in alternate snaps. And then when they lost to the Bears, he realized that doesn't really work. Put Staubach in, and they promptly won 10 games and won a Super Bowl that year. The Commanders and the Colts could be thinking, well, this quarterback platoon, maybe there's an option because they both benched effectively their starting quarterback. Taylor Heineke started last week, leading the Commanders to a surprising victory, to say the least. Many people speculating, could this be finally the turnaround for them and green shoots of recovery for a very troubled franchise? The Colts, potentially an even more surprising news, given that they brought Matt Ryan in the offseason. If you haven't heard it already, have announced that he is benched for the rest of the season, arguably. We'll see if that transpires, actually. And they've brought in Sam Ehlinger. And if you're wondering what is a Sam Ehlinger, I think most of the NFL are waiting this weekend. He has never thrown a competitive pass in the NFL after being drafted in the 6th round. Well, Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round, so maybe that's going to be a good omen. And that he went to Westlake and set various high school records where actually Drew Brees and Nick Foles also went. So maybe he's going to win a Super Bowl like the two of them did. There's lots of omens, hopefully. We heard earlier on last night from, wasn't it Connor, I think, who shared with us, it seems to be driven by ownership very heavily. Jim Irsay very unhappy with the start of the Colts season. and he's every reason to be. They've been pretty poor. I don't know if that's down to Matt Ryan. I think it's more down to a pretty bad offensive line, although Ryan has been suffering under pass rush pressure. Guarantee you one thing, the Commanders, what they do have is still a very impressive front seven, especially a very impressive defensive front. So this game is hard to call because both teams have been so poor during the year that either of them could quite conceivably not turn up. I actually think it's a bit of a coin flip. I don't think going to a completely unproven quantity in Ellinger is going to suddenly kickstart the Colts season. If they could replace the offensive line with 5 people who've actually met each other and know how to block, that might actually help to begin with. I was pretty brutal about them in the Titans game last year, and they lived down to the expectations. Realistically, I could go either way, but maybe I believe a little bit more in the Commanders after what was, as I said, a stunning surprise victory last week. And so I'm going to go for the Commanders to get on a bit of a roll, as they're so far behind the rest of the NFC East as it is, that they'll at least start to see some further shoots of recovery, especially under our mate, Mr. Heineken, I know. Colm, Brian, who you got? One word.
For me, I'm gonna go Colts. I'm gonna say, and Michael's going Colts.
Commanders.
We have a true 50-50. I told you it was a 50-50 game. There you go. A 50-50 split. They were perfectly set up. Okay, we'll call it a break there for those quick fire rounds, and we will move on in this next segment to a real great NFC West clash. Well, it would have been great in any other year for the last 5 or 6 years, but at this moment in time, it's going to feature 2 teams both under 500 at the moment. Mamas and Papas sang about California dreaming. And these 2 teams are still dreaming of a Super Bowl, but that might be merely a figment of their imagination. The Niners are going into the Los Angeles Rams. Colm, as Brian tries to resolve technical challenges there, how do you have this particular game going down?
This is one where I suppose both teams have flattered to deceive and have disappointed for different reasons. I think if you are the Rams, you're probably looking at it, and it's not so much the injuries, but it's what's gone wrong with your O-line, and obviously Whitworth isn't there. They've had the issue with Cam Akers and what's happening there. I mean, both of these teams, the Rams and the 49ers, were the last 2 standing for Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers were able to get him because they had the extra ammo to do so. But it's probably a testament to both of these teams looking around conference, looking at their rosters, thinking, yeah, we're capable of doing it. We need to make a big splash here. This is another one of those games where I can make a case for both of these sides winning. I can. The 49ers are still really beaten up, and the Rams, coming back, having maybe fixed things, they could get the victory. Equally, you're looking at that 49ers defense, and you think, well, they can't have another week where they don't get to the QB. For me, I suppose what I would say is, I'm going to lean into the Niners. I think just because Aaron Donald has looked more human this year, and we've seen what the Rams have done. They have looked to move him around in order to try to make him more effective. And by more human, he is still a phenomenally good player. But Aaron Donald, for the best part of a decade, has been superhuman. He has been completely unblockable, and he, no matter what you did, you couldn't stop him. This year, losing Von Miller was huge. And what teams have done is they have actually double or triple team Donald, and knowing that they can take him out of the game and the Rams don't have anything else. I'm going to say Christian McCaffrey does enough to win it for the Niners, but I have zero faith in Jimmy Garoppolo, and he seems to be, he knows this is his last year in the Bay Area, and he doesn't seem to be taking any prisoners at the podium.
Oh God, it is a very difficult one to make an assessment on and make a proper pick. I've always been quite keen on the Rams in this game, and I've always seemed to come out the wrong side. And then I look at the numbers; like they've won 7 games in a row against the Rams in the regular season, and then they go and lose the championship game. Similar enough to the Bucs and Saints. Saints always have the number. A couple of years ago, go to playoffs, the Bucs beat them, and God, it's difficult. And I wonder where the Rams are going to be after the bye, because we saw last year, and once the bye was quite later on in the season, it kind of, the last 2 Super Bowl winners have had their buys quite late November, and it's kind of played into their hands. They come back, they go on a run, they re-energise themselves during the break and assess where they've been. So maybe it's not the case because the Rams are having a bye quite early in the season, and they probably need it because they haven't really been doing a lot. I don't think that's going to change. I think Stafford is struggling. Michael made a point early on in week 1, in particular when we were doing our Thursday night preview, we felt there was more to the injury than people were letting on. I'm starting to believe that could be the case. And as bad as the 49ers have been, they always find a way to win this game. They'll have a huge contingent of supporters down there. So I'm with Colm. I'm a bit more confident on the Rams, to be honest, than the way Colm is going on with this game in terms of being a 50-50 toss-up, whatever way you want to proclaim it. But I think the Niners will win this game.
So the Niners they're in bad shape. Like, they don't have many of their starters on defense. Their defense is more than banged up. It's in a bad way. Their secondary, I feel like we've been saying this for the last 4 years, including when they've made Super Bowl runs. Their secondary isn't good. Like, their corners can be exploited on a regular basis. And more often than not, and we haven't always said this in the last 4 years, but we can definitely say this year, their offensive line is bad. Their offensive line is allowing far too much pressure through and is not creating the same push in the run game as before. They're probably the 2 biggest weaknesses of the offensive line and the cornerback. So obviously, what did they address in the trade deadline? They bring in Christian McCaffrey. Now, don't get me wrong. I, like anyone else, is excited about the idea of Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Brendan Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel lining up in a Kyle Shanahan offense. I mean, quite literally, any one of the 5 could line up at any position in the offense, and it would be a viable construct. They are, this is Swiss Army knife times clock times banking, etc. Continue on the Swissing theme in relation to it. I think they've got 37 cantons in Switzerland. There's probably about 37 different offensive coordination themes that Kyle Shanahan's come up with in the last week since he's got CMAC. So it's very exciting, but they are very flawed. The one thing that's going for them in this game isn't just their impressive record against the Rams in the regular season, though. It's every time the Rams have faced a decent pass rush, and even with their injuries, the 49ers can still get pressure on the quarterback, especially from the defensive line, just rushing forward. They can get that pressure on. The Rams' offensive line have wilted. They wilted against the Bills in the opener. They wilted completely against the Cowboys. And it's a very simple equation. Pressure on the quarterback equals bad decisions. Pressure on the quarterback with no run game, like the Rams haven't had, equals poor offensive performance. I don't want to over-exaggerate how bad the 49ers' injuries and position is, but it did feel like I wanted to quote Whitney and Mariah in their song, The Prince of Egypt, when they said there can be miracles when you believe. We're talking about dreaming and believing to this evening. I do believe. I still believe in the 49ers. I still believe in my preseason Super Bowl pick that they can somehow fix this and that Shanahan's going to weave some magic and we're going to have lots of excitement as neutral fans with the combination of all these players lined up. The only problem with that belief that I'm struggling with still is Jimmy Garoppolo. And yes, I mentioned he has 2 Super Bowl rings, generally to wind up Packers fans more than anyone. But the reality is he still is, when I mentioned about their secondary, when I mentioned about their offensive line, probably the biggest weak link of all. It's a poor NFC West this year and this season. I still bank on the 49ers to come out of it, and they're going to start by winning this game, especially by putting so much pressure on Matt Stafford and the Rams. I don't say it's a lock of the week or anything dramatic like that, because it's not. I mean, there's a very viable pathway where the Rams win this game, but my pick would be for the San Francisco 49ers in the Battle of California this weekend. Colm, what has Michael picked on this one?
He differs. He says that the Rams and Sean McVay get the victory.
There you go. That's why we wouldn't want to all agree. We are going to close out with 2 fascinating games, and probably the 2 most exciting games in many respects of the weekend. They're the most exciting because they're probably featuring the teams with the best records generally, or in the latter category of the Sunday Night Football game, a team who probably we expected to have a better record but don't. Before we get on to the Packers versus the Bills, though, let's move on to the only game. We've said it a few times. Brian, you want to keep saying it because I think you're very excited about it. The only game featuring 2 teams with winning records this season. Brian Dobson and the Brian O'Leary and the 6-1 Giants versus the Seattle Seahawks and Geno Smith. Who would have thunk it? Every dog has its day and all that, because there is redemption stories galore for Daniel Jones and indeed for ex-New York Jets quarterback Geno Smith. Colm, it's in Lumen Field, so it's in Seattle. The famed 12th man might appear, and Brian's prediction of the Seattle winning 12 games this season might well come true at some point. I know it was only 9, Brian. I'm just winding you up. Colm, who have you got winning this game and why?
We need to keep pushing that up. I remember Brian saying that the Seahawks would rival the 72 Dolphins. This game is fascinating. It really is, because I think for the Giants, they are going up against the best passing offense that they have faced. And I think for the Seahawks, they're going up against the best rushing offense that they have faced. So it's kind of somewhat a clash of contrast, but equally the Seahawks are pretty good on the ground. Look, the Giants have overperformed. This has been a coaching masterclass from Brian Daboll. Look at the Giants don't have a single receiver with more than 200 yards, and yet they have gone out and find ways to win. They've been fantastic, and we talked about it on Monday's show. I see the Giants and the Titans being very similar in that Daboll and Vrabel ensure their teams don't make mistakes, right? You coach clean, you play as clean as possible, and you wait on the other team to make mistakes. And then in the fourth quarter is kind of where you pounce, and that's where the Titans have proved so effective, and that's where the Giants this year have proven so effective. Again, it's the NFL. I can make a case for both of these teams winning. I can make a case for the Giants going 7-1. You know, in terms of the Seahawks haven't been able to stop the run. You've got Saquon, you've got Daniel Jones with a competent staff that designed runs. He moves really well. I can equally make a case for the Seahawks because Kenneth Walker and obviously losing DK, I think, is a huge blow. We don't know. He's not having surgery, but there doesn't seem to kind of be anything saying about how long he might be out. This to me was probably the toughest game to pick. I'm as I'm talking, I'm kind of going at which way I'm going to go. I think for the Seahawks, I think this could be where the 12th man really reemerges, right? Because At the start it was almost a novelty, right, with the way Gino was playing. But I think both of these teams, we're in week 8. Neither of these teams are a novelty act. These are both serious NFL teams. I'm going to say home advantage means that the Seahawks squeak it. But if you told me that the Giants were to win it by a touchdown, that wouldn't surprise me either.
It certainly does worry me when you see Geno Smith going up and down the field on teams, and he's had 1,700 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's by far he's second in the ratings behind Josh Allen. But then I look at the games in which he struggled, and I look at the defense in which he struggled against. San Francisco in week 2, he didn't do anything in that game. He was shut down. Week 1 as well. Broncos defense been, for all the struggles, the Broncos defense has been very good to see. And he shut him down in the second half. He was shut down in week 2. The Cards last week, for all their flaws, they, defensively, when they went in there and they lost 19-9, they shut him down for large parts of the games. The games in which he's played really well in, Falcons defense struggles, Saints defense struggles, Chargers defense struggles, and the Lions defense struggles. The Giants defense right now is top 6 in the league. They're 4th in red zone in terms of giving away touchdowns. They're 4th in third downs. I can see scenarios where they'll put Geno in uncomfortable situations. I think DK Metcalf is actually a huge loss. Because once the Giants have gone up against really strong running backs who have done a good job on them, they find ways to settle down and take them out of the game. And then I ask, where then does Seattle find a way to beat this Giants defence? And I don't think they can, despite it being on the road and the crowd noise. And the one thing Giants are really efficient at is time of possession. You look at all the games, they're by and large out of each team they play. I can see them having long, methodical drives into the fourth quarter. And I'm going to go with the Giants. I think right now, going into Seattle doesn't phase this team. They could get blown out, potentially, if they don't get to Geno, but I don't see it. I think the Giants will win a close one and just about get over the line and move to 7-1.
Colin, who does Michael have in this one?
Michael is getting aboard the Seahawks train, and he is saying that Seattle will get the victory.
The man who thought I was crazy when I said they win 9 games is now...
No, when you said they win 12, Brian, it was definitely 12. Definitely 12.
I said they go to playoffs as well, and I could be right on that one.
You could well be right on that one in relation to it. You could well be.
Imagine going to the playoffs and potentially having a top 5 pick.
Look, you guys have summed up the game really well here. I do think the killer is going to be the key matchup is basically Saquon. I would say Giants run game, although Daniel Jones does feature in that run game. So the Giants run game against the Seattle rush defense, which I think it's fair to say there is a question mark over still. Seattle have given up points. They have been explosive on offense, but they have given up points as well. And the reality for me is both of these teams are dreaming in many respects. I don't think if you had asked Giants fans at the start of the year, are you going to be 6-1? Brian, would you have said we're going to be 6-1? Of course you wouldn't. Don't even answer the question. We know the answer. I think also Seattle fans were almost giving up on the season. They were like, oh, we're in a full rebuild mode. This is a complete teardown. Guys, you're a 4-3. This season is actually well on course in relation to it, and especially with the other weaknesses in your division and indeed in your conference generally as well. Dreams can come true. Lots of bands have written songs about dreams. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, Dreams by Gabrielle, Dreams by the Cranberries, Dreams by the Cause in relation to it. But only one team will be singing at the end of Sunday, and the other will be living with the Boulevard of Broken Dreams a la Green Day. And the New York Giants will be sitting on the sidelines looking up at Lumen Field, singing "You're Not Singing Anymore" to the Seattle Seahawks fans. I said it the other week. For the first time in 6 years, I can watch a New York Giants football game and actually believe they're going to win, believe they can come back from being behind, believe they're actually going to convert on third downs. It's an unusual experience. I haven't experienced it in a while. Brian, how are you feeling about it? It must be unusual for you to be watching a game and they're not imploding. You feeling okay?
It's stressful. Certainly last Sunday in the last drive, where it looks like the game has been put away and they found ways to leave the Jags hanging around in that last drive. It's great. let's be fair, it's a great storyline whether you're a Giants fan or not. Do you know, when I think back to the day, I was thinking back to when we did the show with Jeff in Croke Park the week before the Super Bowl, and we were talking about the Bengals, and we were talking about the fact that they came to the Super Bowl having won 4 games a season before that. And Jeff jokingly said, "You're only pumping that up because you're hoping that's the Giants scenario come next season, having won 4 games that season." Well, right now it is the scenario. But look, we're not going to go to the Super Bowl, but it certainly looks like we could be in the playoffs. What's the mark for the playoffs now, Brendan, with how poor the NFC is? 9 games to be a wildcard team?
You could have 3 teams out of the NFC East very comfortably going to the playoffs. Giants and Cowboys taking 2 of the wild cards.
Well, depending on how the results go this weekend.
Could be possible. I'm assuming that the Eagles will, as I know you're very excited about Brian, go 16-0 in the regular season. And he's excited about their inexorable march to the Super Bowl. So, we look forward to that. Sorry, I can't keep it up. Anyway, I have the Giants. So a fair, again, a split decision in relation to that one.
Colin has failed me.
I talked about it on Monday Night Show. I have come to. I apologize to Pete Carroll for everything other than USC, and I have been very impressed by what the Seahawks have done, and I just think maybe the tide has turned a little bit in the league. Last week we saw big points put up, and that's the way that the league has trended. I do think this will be an intriguing matchup. I think it'll be close. I'm just going for the Seahawks to squeak it.
No, very valid points. And look, let's move on to our last game of this evening, breaking down for the weekend. The big Sunday night football game. It was probably thought it's going to be an even bigger game when it was initially announced, but somehow the 3-1 Green Bay Packers have, the Green Bay Packers have slumped to 3-4 overall. Shocking. They were 3-1. They lost 3 in the bounce, haven't they, to the Giants, Jets, and the Commanders. 3 games most Packers fans would have identified at the start of the year as wins, I think to say. Most neutrals will identify it as wins for the Packers. I don't want to go through what we all 4 picked in those games because I think there was only one dissent on any of those games, which was the last one. They go into, on a very big slump, to the 5-1 Buffalo Bills. Colin, the alarm klaxons are sounding in Green Bay. The mood music from Aaron Rodgers is not positive. We started the season and kind of saying Jesus, if Aaron Rodgers is the thing we've got to worry about here because the defense seems fine, the run game seems fine, that'll sort itself out in a few weeks. And, more power to Green Bay because they finally got a bit of balance. It hasn't worked out like that in the last few weeks. And of all the teams you want to go up to, Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles are probably the 3 you wouldn't like to be visiting. Unfortunately, they draw on the short straw this weekend in prime time.
Yeah, but it's the NFL. All things are possible. So let's not say it is impossible or beyond the realms. Anything could happen. But yeah, the Bills are the team you really don't want to be going up against when you consider that their biggest weakness on defense is probably going up against WR1s. And what do the Packers not have? This is where the Packers, all of the history that's there. We know the history, but my understanding, they have never won in Buffalo, and that is telling. The Bills have to do their job, and I do think it's going to be very interesting to see what the reaction from the Packers is. Right, we heard Aaron Rodgers' comments. Obviously, this week we heard his coach come out and say, "Yeah, he was telling the truth," and sometimes the truth hurts. But what was intriguing to me was last week in their game against the Commanders, Matt Schneidman tweeted that the entirety of the front office, left the booth with 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes to go. Can you imagine that in any previous year in a game with Aaron Rodgers, where, that is quite telling. Things are not right in Green Bay. And look, maybe this is a story where we sit here and we look and we go, wow, the NFL, anything is possible. And where Monday is one of those stories that Aaron Rodgers suddenly, led his team to victory. But Josh Allen and the Bills and the coaching staff, who, in fairness, we talked about like Brian Daboll as the leading candidate, right, for Coach of the Year. They lost that talent, and yet they haven't missed a beat. That is a testament to the work that Sean McDermott has done there, that their GM has done there in terms of putting the foundations down. Because we know how good Brian Daboll is. This isn't the case where, Brian Daboll has got on and you've gone, well, it wasn't. You can see clearly how good he is. But Josh Allen and the Bills are playing at an incredible level. It's a bit like the Eagles. The biggest issue that they have is complacency, because that can sometimes happen. If the Bills show up, do their jobs, they will get the victory. And the Packers and Aaron Rodgers will have another week of answering questions. You are on mute, Brian.
I'm back in business. No, I'm just looking at a scenario where you could see how the Packers can win this game. On Monday on the show, Colin called out the fact that they gave up on the run game in Washington last week. They only had 38 yards rushing throughout the course of the game. Colin said last week, for them to get back playing good, sound offensive football, they need to lean on the run game. They were the most effective games. The one against the Patriots, the one against the Bears. And they've gone away from that in the number of games. And it's not justified because they don't have the players right now offensively to do that. And why can't they not recognise that and go back to what worked previously? Two strong running backs. I'm not saying they're world beaters, but Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are really strong on their day. You get a good methodical drives going, you settle the crowd down, you score touchdowns, and you never know. You hit a Bills team on maybe in the first half who are coming off a bye. We've seen in the past teams that come off a bye and they're very slow to get going. Whatever it is about the week off, they just don't seem to get going until maybe into the second half, which would lead to the game being close. Who knows? The Bills, I'll give you the flip side of that. The Bills haven't got the greatest of run game, but against the Chiefs 2 weeks ago, they ran the ball 17 times. They want to maintain some kind of consistency to the run to complement Josh Allen and the offense that they have. The Packers have essentially gone away from that. I don't see anything other than a Bills win. I don't think it'll be as high scoring, as comfortable as people lead it to believe. It's led to be believed. I think the Packers will play a little bit better this week, but ultimately they're going up against a team that everyone thinks are going to be inevitably in the Super Bowl come February, if not certainly in the championship game. I don't think against a quarterback who's thrown 17 touchdowns already this season in Josh Allen, it's sustainable for them to go 4 quarters against them and come out the right side of the result. Bills for me to win this game.
Look, we need some balance. We need some positivity here. Colin, I actually just checked. I mean, I didn't believe it, but you're right. The Packers have never, ever won in Buffalo. They're 0-6 there. It's the only road location the Packers, during their illustrious NFL history, have never actually won in. However, Packers fans, you are 13-0 in their last 13 primetime NFL appearances. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers do show up for primetime. And I agree, Brian, they need more balance. And there is a formula they can win this game. They control the clock with the run game. They control the clock and they devote more attention to the run game. And the Bills' defense is very impressive. Do not get me wrong in any respect. They are the first-ranked defense in the NFL. I believe they were the first-ranked defense, certainly for the entirety of the 2021 season. So they are an impressive unit. But potentially, if you can keep push in the run game and keep them on the back foot and keep Josh Allen off the field, that will help. The Bills can't do the same with their run game because, to be frank, even though they try and run the ball, they're still relying on Josh Allen as their leading runner during the season, and that is not a long-term sustainable model. Other keys to the Packers potentially winning this game, it's very simple. Don't engage special teams at all. Just don't try and punt the ball in case it gets blocked. Definitely don't try returning it. Just let don't even try fair catching it. Just let it bounce. Just let it go where it lands. but don't take the risk anymore because their special teams, of course, the last couple of weeks has been an absolute liability. They've been a fantastic team for the last 3 seasons. No team has more regular seasons wins. The running joke about, they've already exhausted their 3 losses for the year. Well, no, they're actually up to 4 now. And that is not where Matt LaFleur, that's certainly not where Aaron Rodgers wants to be. Lots of social media noise and nonsense, I think, on some reports saying, is Aaron Rodgers trying to play his way out of Green Bay and everything? No, the guy wants to win a Super Bowl again and everything. He's playing for the Green Bay Packers this year. You've got to believe they resolve some of that off-season drama. And it is the offensive line around him. It's the inconsistency they're seeing there. It is certainly the inconsistency at receivers, and he has not gelled with them. And they will, I believe, still get better. But I must admit, every week I've kind of gone, well, the Giants, they'll get over that against Jets. No, they didn't. They'll get over that against Commanders. No, they didn't. So even with all those options of positivity, Packers fans, what gives you any hope, really, that they're going to suddenly turn it around against one of the best teams in the NFL? If they can control the clock, if they control the run game, maybe. But let's just go with the win predictor on ESPN at the moment. I think is tracking at 85% in favor of the Bills. The Bills are minus 11.5 points on the spread. I mean, these are unbelievable numbers in the era of, well, not only Matt LaFleur, but just the era of Aaron Rodgers, I would say. It starts to feel a little bit beginning of the end. Maybe that's when Green Bay will turn out a performance for the ages and shock us all. But for me, I'm kind of in the boat as well as to, while I can conceivably say it's any given Sunday, conceivably can see a path for any team to win a particular game, it's very, very difficult to really go against the Bills for this game. So for me, it's the Bills, Packers to drop 4 in a row and fall even further behind the Vikings in the NFC North race. Colm, do we have a quorum and the
Bills.
Doomed death?
Yes.
There.
Bills.
There you have it. There you have it, everybody. If you're a Packers fan and you're listening to this and you're feeling a little bit depressed, the fact that all 4 of us have gone for the Bills should give you a small modicum of hope that the inevitable Irish NFL unanimous curse has come to pass and now will doom the Bills to a surprise defeat out of the jaws of inevitable victory. Brian, anything else to wrap up in relation to that? It looks like you're dying to make a further final comment.
No, that's it. I guess we're delaying our selections for the Jags-Broncos game till Sunday, when the content will go out throughout the course of the weekend from London and then from Wembley over to Saturday and Sunday, I believe. And then we'll be back on Monday to review another crazy weekend as we look ahead to Monday Night Football, AFC North, the Browns hosting the Cincinnati Bengals, who are on a bit of a hot streak at the moment. But the great thing about this Packers game is, for people who like to stay for Sunday Night Football, it's a little bit easier this weekend because the game will commence at 12:20. I don't know, it's just psychologically, it just sounds so easier to watch a game at 12:20 as opposed to waiting for a 1:20 kickoff, which is not really much of a difference, but it'll feel like that on Sunday night when we've got over the early games and then we hit 12:20.
And it's a bank holiday on the Monday.
Yes, trick-or-treating on Monday night. I cannot wait. It's going to be the times are so exciting. I've got my Eli Manning costume ready. I saw our friend License Plate Guys, one that was delivered today. He's dressing up as Eli. We're both in sync for Monday. We have our footballs, our helmets. Oh, never mind the children dressing up. I'm ready to go.
Well, I can't wait to see if Russell Wilson goes trick-or-treating on the plane home to Denver on Sunday night into Monday morning, given what he got up to on the way over. So it'll be very interesting. That might.
Sorry. What did he get up to on the way over?
Mark, have you lived in a cave? This was the talk of social media earlier. Russell, while the other players were sleeping, spent a couple of hours watching film
4 hours.
Yeah, but no, he started off. So he
Oh.
watched a couple of hours of film. The others went to sleep. Then he spent 4 hours stretching, doing high kicks, moving up and down the aisle. And then he watched some more. He slept for an hour. He watched some more film. They landed in London. I don't know how you missed this, Mark. This was the biggest talking point on the Twitter machine, as Vincent Brown would say, and the memification of it over the past number of hours has been spectacular. But plenty to look forward to in the week 8 action. And as Brian says, we will be back on Monday night.
Absolutely. Brian's got the Eli helmet pack for Halloween. Colm has the signed orange boxers by Steve Atwater and his toothbrush ready for the trip to London. We will be back with you next week, everyone. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Enjoy, as always, the weekend of games. And enjoy telling us when we get things wrong. Even sometimes when we get things right. Maybe sometimes. That'd be nice as well. All right. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games. See you all then.